we are at Har Mahdeem's house, and he has a wonderful garden, and it's not just beautiful, but it's a working, edible landscape. And a lot of the plants are from the Amazon region, but also from other parts of the world. And Har has been getting his place ready for the hurricane. So here's a residential view of, well, it's sort of residential on steroids, but view of getting your place ready for the hurricane.
This kind of stell tree was way too tall, and I took about half the height off this week. You can look up in here and see where I took off vertical branches about 15 feet long. And that side over the roof is bushier because I had pruned that back earlier. So I didn't do the tree all at the same time. If I have a chance tomorrow, I'll stand on the edge of the roof and thin that out a little bit just to reduce the sail power during the upcoming winds. The leaves, not just because of storm, but I do this normally, I use natural materials mulch, which means unchipped, unshredded leaves and small branches. Small enough that you can comfortably walk on without it springing or a branch jumping up and poking you in the knee. This is a Rollinia, or Bidibah. I'm going to cut it off right here and over there to reduce the wind damage. Here you can see sunburn damage from after a previous hurricane. When all the leaves are gone, branches that are like 45-degree angle or lower often get too hot and the bark dies, and the cambium layer under the bark dies, and you end up with dead wood. You can see that on this branch as well.
So do you ever take any precautions against sunburn after?
Well, it would have been nice if I had painted it white, but
sometimes do you put the branches that have leaves on it just over for shade, right? There.
Yeah, that doesn't work during hurricanes, though. It blows away.
Well, but so, after the hurricane passes. So.
It would have been a good idea. This is a Malay apple. It's pretty tough. I may not get around to doing anything with it. I did take the middle out of it last spring, or last fall, I guess, but it really does need to be thinned. Shall I get a ladder and start doing that, or we just want to talk about it?
You can just talk about it. We're all recovered from today's work, it looks like.
Yeah, I was thinking to do another trip. The jackfruit, I need to cut the top half out of that. The Elan was a much larger tree, and I already topped it. Those very small tender branches will snap off during the wind. I'm not too worried about that. If big branches had been left up there, those could have done damage to the house or to the neighbor's cars or house, depending on the direction of the wind. In past hurricanes, this was the only tree that dropped branches onto the neighbor's yards because I hadn't pruned it.
So, what kind of damage did you get during the
During Hurricane Wilma, those two Bidibah or Rollinia trees got shaken very badly. They still haven't recovered now, a dozen years later. Anonas get really messed up rather permanently when the roots are twisted or broken. An Annona purpurea tree that I had by the driveway died last year, I think as a result of Hurricane Wilma damage.
11 years prior?
Yes.
Wow. With Wilma, that all of the mulch and stuff that we had was blown away. Did you have? I mean, it looks like this is harder to blow away. That it's that it would stay more intact with the wind.
During Wilma, all my mulch stayed at home. I had broken branches from all my neighbors' trees all around, mangoes, avocados, whatever, in my yard. But I couldn't see any of my branches in any of their yards, even though I was pruning right during the start of the storm. But because I have such a dense yard with pretty much a full privacy line around, everything stayed inside the yard. If you have a big open yard, expanses of grass like a lot of people like, then if you put any branches on the ground, they're probably going to blow away. That's what you hear about on the TV all the time. Don't cut branches after a storm is named. They really don't want branches to be put out by the street, because then the city might get complaints about not having picked up the branches in time. So they tell you, don't put branches out there. And they do own that strip of land along the street, so you'd better not put branches out there. And also, the edge of the street does tend to be very exposed to wind, because there's that long, usually straight expanse that if the wind comes in that direction, it will be very strong. But between houses and trees, where the houses and trees are of similar height, it all slows the winds down substantially, sometimes like 30 miles an hour or even more of a slowdown compared to just a few feet higher up. So if you leave a tree unpruned higher than that, those branches are likely to break off and become missiles already with a flying start way up there, and they can go a long ways. So some of the stuff that you hear on TV really doesn't make sense, because they're talking so much about how pruned branches can become missiles, which they can, but they're failing to tell you about how the unpruned trees will also break up and become even worse missiles, and sooner, far sooner than ones in the ground would be picked up by tornadoes or Category 3 or higher hurricanes.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, that a lot of situations it's safer to trim the tree than it is to not trim it.
Exactly.
If you do have trees or something on your property, it does block the potential rolling of the branches that you've trimmed. But I know that in past times you haven't had time until right before a hurricane to actually trim your trees and do some major trimming. And as I recall, you put all of the smaller branches on the bottom of the pile and put the big logs on top, and nothing shifted during the hurricane.
That's right. I also have a bunch of empty 2.5-gallon jugs that used to have relatively non-toxic stuff in them, like spray oil or insecticidal soap. or fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, and I fill those with water and use them as weights on piles of branches or my garage door or anything else that might wiggle a lot or try to lift up off the ground. So all these branches you see here are from mango trees. I don't have mango trees in my yard, but I prune a lot of other people's trees. So the bigger wood I haul away to the Solid Waste Authority, but the tender branches and leaves are good stuff for me.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of nutrients in the leaves, so but I'm assuming that you're all in this one area because Tuali doesn't come over in this area, is that right?
I do almost all of the yard, just not all at once.
But
so this section was done most recently, as well as the front yard.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that because your wife is allergic to mangoes, and so
that's right. So I don't put them right by any path that you would normally walk on.
Oh, you've been here with the saw. Did you trim that, let's see, a couple weeks ago?
Yes. You can see by the dry leaves that it wasn't this week. So I was in there cutting up the branches on the ground some today. I did take a heaping load to the Solid Waste Authority of that kind of woody stuff, but I do try to leave all the leaves. As you just mentioned, leaves are high in nutritional value for the plant roots. Way higher than wood. These are katuk. Nice delicacy. The tender tips. Great raw. Bring my machete out here tomorrow and decapitate this banana at about shoulder height. It will start growing almost immediately. The center plug
That's quite a papaya.
Yeah, this huge papaya is pretty well supported here. It'll probably come crashing down during the storm, but there's nothing under that it will hurt.
So how old is that papaya?
A couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years.
Did it flow over with some special wind event or?
Matthew.
Matthew, wow.
Yeah.
You actually got some damage from Matthew.
Yeah, a little bit of wind.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to speak of.
Yeah. So I did some preparatory pruning before Hurricane Matthew. And back here you can see that I've been pruning stuff away from the wires. Obviously I need to continue along over here. They tell us on TV not to do that, but inside this closed yard I certainly intend to. Over here also, where the neighbor's wires go, I need to prune that carambola.
So do you have any trees that do especially well during a hurricane? And you already mentioned the anonas is doing especially poorly.
Mangoes tend to do pretty well. This tree's been through a few storms. That's a tree that probably none of the viewers are going to be familiar with. It's a distant relative of lychees and longans. It's from the Amazon in the Talesia genus. Very tough, but I intend to cut some of that tomorrow.
So I'm assuming it has a fruit. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a brown fruit. I call it Amazon longan, spelled with a hyphen, because it's not a longan, but sure looks like one and is related. Sapote's real tough. I've cut it back before, but it's a bit too dense, so tomorrow I'll probably be up in the top of the tree thinning out some of the branches.
Yeah, that's a big tree.
Yeah. And it's awfully close to the house.
Yeah, sometimes you just wish you could relocate them easily.
There are a couple other trees we should look at. There's another honey-stell tree that I've cut back a lot before, but I should cut several more branches now.
That's the aurea.
Yes. And these mountain soursops, you need to cut all of them back. Those will tear up or blow over real bad if I leave them the way they are.
You've got a lot of fruit on that, so I'm assuming that the root system isn't quite as sensitive as the Rollinia.
Right. Mountain soursop grows very well in most places. Very tough plants. And then up by the corner, you can call this a feather leaf lucina. That's my made-up name for it. In Mexico, they call it guaje rojo, red guaje. It's an edible legume tree. The seeds, when they're still tender, are like baby peas plus garlic, raw garlic. This will break very easily in a storm. So I'll get my manual pole saw up here and cut those. They cut very easily. Now, the first time it was cut, it was hat wrapped. That's the way it had to be done. But now each time I can cut a little further out from before, and it's a type of pollarding. So it gradually becomes more dense.
Get some lateral growth instead of just the upright growth.
Yeah.
Too.
And many tips, instead of just, it tends to be very long, whip-like.
So when you trim this back for the hurricane, does it disturb its fruiting for this upcoming season?
Yeah. Yes, it has not fruited at all for the last couple of years from too much pruning. So it just is a neat looking shade tree.
So are there other things that you have to prune back for hurricanes that disrupts their fruiting cycle?
Pretty much anything gets disrupted.
Well, there's some things that recover very quickly.
Yeah.
It seems that the annonas, the sugar apple, they tend to flower on new growth.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to think of what else The black sapote, I don't know. It's been a while since we've really hit, trimmed that back hard at my place, but it seems like it's pretty fast to flower. Is that the case for yours, or?
The black sapote,
Yeah.
you say? Yeah. It did fruit some this winter, even though I pruned it pretty hard last year. So you're right.
And then
Pretty well. You can see some fruit up there now.
the carambolas fruits pretty quickly too.
True. And since it fruits twice a year usually, you're likely to get at least one crop after a severe pruning.
Yeah. So yeah, at least you're not going to go hungry. Plus, you have a lot of edible greens in your yard. But
These,
not this one.
no. Well, it would be nice if it were, but I haven't heard. That's coral creeper. If it's edible, let me know. I have a lot of it, and it looks luscious. Speaking of edible greens, this cactus is edible. Presumably the storm will knock some of that out of the tree. I don't think I'll bother to cut any out.
Going.
I hope none of my grafts get broken off. This is a mamey apple, Mamia americana. It's a male tree, so no fruits. A friend of mine, Miss Betty Borges, brought me some graftwood from a female tree, so I have several grafts here. So maybe in another year or two I'll get some fruit.
You know what I've been doing the last day plus is cutting back the grafts and reinforcing where the union is. So if you might want to at least try and salvage a few, or give an insurance policy.
I could probably cut low enough to just leave 4 leaves on that. That would be pretty stout, I think. And this graft has 2 branches, so I'll have to stub both of those back. Yeah, have plenty to do in the next couple of days.
Yeah, it's too bad that a lot of this is gardening by crisis.
Right, so that's why some emergency pruning one does leave till the last minute, because one hopes that the hurricane will go somewhere else, which often happens. But when one is convinced that it is coming here and it's going to be bad, then one does extreme, hateful type of pruning that one wouldn't do for just about any other occasion.
Yeah, you have to save the trees, and a lot of times it's calls for very drastic measures. Anyway, I love your place, Har. Looks great. I know you're going to get tired in the next couple days with all the work.
Already am.
Yeah. But thanks for showing us around.
All right.